Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's great to be here and join the Global Entrepreneurship Week Thailand 2020. My name is Sakdipon, and I will be the moderator today in the topic of the IDE Node and IDE Network, how to grow the mango tree and not the airplanes. Okay, so what the IDE stands for, maybe it's going to be one of the questions from the audience for sure, but I would like to say that the IDE stands for the Innovation Driven Entrepreneurship, and since 2016 we have used this term given we have a collaboration with the MIT REAP or the regional entrepreneurship acceleration program from the MIT, and we joined the MIT Global Innovation Network. And today on the special topic, we have three distinguished panel guests. Allow me to virtually invite the panel guests to the audience. The first and the foremost is Dr. Edward Rubesch. He is one of the person I believe that work on the entrepreneurship development in Thailand longer than anyone. That's what I believe. I'm not sure he is or not, but from my experience, he's the one. And the second one is Dr. Pieangpen Wongnapapan. Her specialist is in the intellectual property, and she also worked in the Ministry of Science for a long time, I think more than 10 years. And right now she's at the KMUTT. And last but not least is Dr. Anukul Chiralaksanakul. Okay, he is an associate professor who runs the entrepreneurship and innovation at NIDA Business School. But before we go through all the questions, I like, each panel to briefly tell us about yourself. Well, can we start with Dr. Pieangpen?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pieangpen. I'm a Chief Operating Officer at the KX Knowledge Exchange for Innovation Center of KMUTT. Here at KX, we run some programs to support startups and entrepreneurs to bring their idea to the market. We help them build some prototype. We have many machines to make their dreams come true. We are housing more than 40 startups in the building, including the Thai FinTech Association and the Electric Car Association of Thailand. And we are positioning ourselves as an intermediary body, trying to help startup and entrepreneurs to get a lot of help from different parties in Thailand. Thank you.
I'm not sure my internet is bad or that's all. Thank you very much, Dr. Pieangpen. Can you hear me, right?
Yeah, I hear you okay.
Okay, so next I'd like Dr. Edward to say something about yourself a bit.
Okay, I'm at the IDE Center. As Deng said earlier, I have been working on entrepreneurship for quite a while in Thailand. My background is originally engineering, but probably engineering with a strong dose of design and entrepreneurship right from the beginning. And I'm always interested in how to help people, any people, become more innovative in their lives.
Okay. And lastly, Dr. Anukul, could you please tell us about yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Anukul. Like Ajahn Teng said, I'm at NIDA Business School, and I started to work on the entrepreneurship maybe around 2016, 17. And before that, I was working on the a program about competitiveness and ecosystem development with NIDA for some time, and at some point, the NIDA wants to start about this entrepreneurship program, and the president asked me to explore and how to set this program up, and that's how I become part of this IDA network. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, all three of you. And then it's great to be here virtually. And now I believe that many of you have heard about the entrepreneurship ecosystem development that has been promoted and support over the decade. Some development program is success, some's not. So that's why I like to go to the first question that about what do you think about the entrepreneurial ecosystem development in Thailand, and how is it now? What do you think about it? May I start with Dr. Anukul to talk about that from your experience?
Yes. From my experience, I have seen a lot of government programs, government supported program about startup entrepreneurship. Actually, I worked in some of those programs before 2016, but those are related to SME usually. But I think in the last 5 or 6 years, there are a lot of programs funded by the government try to promote about technology startup or innovative startup in Thailand. And from what I have seen, based on my experience, most of the program are they are looking at more like a short-term result. And in the sense that they try to have a workshop and try to incubate or maybe support some of these students to become entrepreneurs. And most of the time, I find that it's the student eventually they go to this program, but eventually they don't become an entrepreneur because they get supported and they, how should I say, they run to this program to win the contest, and most of the reward they want to get, and after they have achieved that reward, then they stop and they start to work on their career later on. And I think I have seen a lot of those students or those people like that. That's from my experience. Yeah. So that's why I think the most of the program are initially, I don't know, at least in the last 5 years, they are focused on this aspect of the ecosystem. I think it's not everything bad, but I mean I from what I see it's a good start in the sense that it build a lot of people awareness and interest for the student, but it doesn't go for the long-term result. Yeah.
So from the university point of view, you think that they have a lot of programs that promote the business competition and give them a reward and prize, and after they pursue on that programs, they didn't do anything forward, or they didn't do for the real thing, or they just stop it and go back to the job market. That's what you think from the MBA point of view, or some of the students who join the graduate school program, because NIDA is a graduate school program, right?
Yes, that's one aspect. Another aspect, and all the teams that come to the program, maybe I think from what I've seen, most of them work on some problem that are how should I say, most of the time the problem are not deep enough or significant enough from what I see.
I see. So I like to go to Dr. Pieangpen, that since you already work in the government agency as well before you move to the university, and then so what do you think about that for the ecosystem development in Thailand from the perspective and from the government point of view, as well as the, from your experience?
I think the thing that I could observe along the years is that most of the program are not allow people to fail. The government program are looking for some numbers, some KPI of how many companies you have helped. If you are giving grant to some companies, you always want to make sure that the research will be successful, will be successfully commercialized. And sometimes the funding program itself did not scrutinize whether or not solving the problem is whether or not the solution that the researchers are working on is actually the right solution for particular problems in Thailand. And the other things is that Thai government already built a lot of infrastructures. I mean, hardware, equipment, buildings, science park, and we are good at building things around. But when it comes to community development, engagement of people, or input some money for the efficient operation, we didn't think through that much. So we can see that many of people, including myself, who are responsible for running an innovation center, we also struggling with trying to run some government program and trying to answer a certain KPI, a certain numbers of company we help, but we also worry how much value we are creating for supporting these guys who want to change the world, who want to make the idea to the market, and what else do we need to improve them to let them really understand the customer. So when we are busy with delivering KPI, then we tend to finish our job, but we tend to also forget how much we can help people who are participating in our programs.
I see. Okay, so they are focused only to create the infrastructure, not the people, right? So is that the reason? Or I mean, I like to ask Dr. Edward also, because you are the one who actually initiate the IDE node and the IDE network, and you has experience in the Ministry of Science as well in your past experience. How does it help to promote the entrepreneurship? I mean, for the IDE node and the IDE network, Dr. Edward. Dr. Edward, you need to unmute, I believe. Can you unmute?
You are correct. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So of course, it depends on the definition of entrepreneurship. Everyone defines it differently. Even programs within the Thai government, in the case of Thailand, but I think every national government faces this, has different ways of measuring entrepreneurial activity, try to measure number of startups or measure amount invested or whatever. And this is what leads to the whole discussion about the mango tree. We're always looking at the harvest, but there aren't enough programs, in my opinion, to talk about how to get the early part of ideas developed and growing. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity, but in some ways there's almost too much money, in my opinion, promoting entrepreneurship. I mean, the places that have become entrepreneurial hotspots became entrepreneurial hotspots not because the money was in entrepreneurship. Many times the money was in somewhere else. So a lot of the US, and for that matter, countries like Israel, there was a lot of money spent usually in defense that created new technologies, but still the entrepreneurial part was somebody had access to that technology, but they still had to go out and figure out how to find that value or solve that problem. And that's really, for me, what makes real, let me call it real entrepreneurship. I'll call it entrepreneurship anyway. The entrepreneurship, in my opinion, is very problem-based and people-based, and then that's kind of consistent with some of the things we see nowadays with lean startup and 24 steps, disciplined entrepreneurship that we use from Bill Lett and things like that. But it wasn't always that way. The world, or the US world, kind of learned this in the .com bubble and bust, that it wasn't enough just to bring in a new technology. You still had to be creating something more valuable. So we're still struggling with that a little bit in Thailand and in Southeast Asia, where a lot of the work I do or all of us work is being done.
So you said that the definition of the entrepreneurship is quite different from the government point of view, because normally the government point of view, they try to measure by the number of the business starting, like the number of the registration business into the government. But actually is not the number of the registration that can capture the entrepreneurial activities. Is that what you try to mean?
Further, I mean, everyone has their own definition of what entrepreneurship is. I mean, since entrepreneurship has become so popular everywhere, there's entrepreneurship gurus everywhere, and so those gurus are promoting something that each of them, and I guess each of us, because we're kind of in that same category, each person is promoting their own version of what they call entrepreneurship, and everyone has their own personal goals wrapped up in it. So some people are trying to create more of a venture capital ecosystem, so they're promoting ventures that they call disruptive, or that they call, they're looking for the 20K, or they use terms like unicorns and stuff like that, even though those kind of things are really, really not common at all. There are lots and lots of places around the world that are, claiming they're promoting unicorns or disruptions. There's other people who are using entrepreneurship to create jobs and to, bring people, empower people to, with jobs disappearing, formal jobs disappearing, entrepreneurship as a way to create new jobs in small SMEs. And of course, there's people, and some of our activities are aligned around using entrepreneurship as a way to empower communities and try to help implement innovations, technologies to a certain extent, but let's call it innovations more generally in areas away from the big cities where things have developed quite rapidly, but in more rural areas or more regional areas, out in the regional areas where the development hasn't happened quite so quickly, there's a goal to use entrepreneurship to do that. So, entrepreneurship comes in a lot of different flavors and with a lot of different goals.
So that's the reason. The last one is the reason why you try to promote the node and network. Is that right? And you believe that the community will help to push each other to create the entrepreneurship. Is that what you try to mention about it? I mean, we try to say, why do you create the node and the network, and how it help the entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, so first of all, my own personal definition, I mean, I'm not the only one who thinks this way, but I certainly believe, similar to the people out there who are talking more of a problem-based sort of entrepreneurship. So, lean model, if you will, discovering people and problems first, and then coming up with innovations that kind of improve those people or those people's lives or lower their problems, and then use that as a driver of innovation. So with that kind of definition, for a long time, as you pointed out when you introduced me, I was doing work at NSTDA in Thailand, and that's back where I first started collaborating with Dr. Pieangpen. We were two of lots of people working on innovation development, and in some cases trying to use entrepreneurship to drive more of that development. I kind of felt like the opportunities in Bangkok were already saturated, meaning it was very, very easy for somebody, somebody who went to school somewhere else, went to university in Europe or the United States or wherever, and they would grab an idea there and bring it back and kind of get it launched, the Bangkok version of that. And that's great, those exist. So if you look at a lot of the startup activity in Bangkok, I mean, it's called for Thailand, but Bangkok is a big chunk of that. It's the usual stuff: food delivery, hotel apps, logistics, that kind of stuff. What was much more wide open, and what I think lent itself to be much more of an opportunity or to solve problems that were more unique to Thailand and Southeast Asia, and that's to get out of Bangkok or out of Panelist or out of Ho Chi Minh City. Those cities kind of have a similar sort of demographic, but if you get outside those cities, you get into villages where still need educational solutions and healthcare delivery solutions, and all kinds of different solutions to help improve their lives. And so the idea of the nodes was to take the same things that we had developed for many, many years in the places like NSTDA and in collaboration with people like Stanford, MIT, and UC Berkeley, and the various activities we were running, and say, how can we make them more available to people outside of Thailand, outside of Bangkok? Now, we have a lot of projects inside of Bangkok as well. What is your English name? Ajahn Guan?
Anukul. Okay. Yes. So
whatever it is, NIDA is in Bangkok. One of our other, we have nodes from Mahidol University outside. So we have activities in Bangkok, but I think in all of these cases, we're representing communities which are not the typical entrepreneurship communities. I mean, one of our Mahidol nodes is the music school, right? That's an interesting, different look. KMUTT is the robotics laboratory. Yeah. So I mean, we're still reaching people that in Bangkok that are trying to be more problem-based and solving problems. And then for the nodes outside of Bangkok, I really hope for this regional innovation opportunity. And in fact, when Steve Blank was here, Steve and I were traveling around the region with his family, and I was showing him some things we were doing, and he said, "Oh, we got to set up this program, Hacking for Regional Innovation." The idea being that somebody comes up with a technology for a rural area, or let's say even a regional town or city, that innovation very likely could be viable across the region from Myanmar to Vietnam. And that has the potential to open up a whole new type of entrepreneur. And so I'm very excited about analogous activities I see in the US, for example, like Rural Rise and some of these programs that are promoting entrepreneurship more in the heartland of the US and away from the Bostons and San Franciscos. So I mean, that's what I think is the most exciting thing about the network that we're setting up, is that we're trying to deliver the same type of entrepreneurship, but make it more accessible at a very local community level.
Yes, that's from the point of Dr. Edward. And then let's go back to Dr. Anukul, who joins this network. What do you think about it, and what the uniqueness of the network? That how do you experience about that? Because right now, I believe that we have around 25 nodes across Thailand, and then NIDA is one of, we part of the network, right? What do you think about it?
Yes, like I said before, so when I think I attend Ajahn Ed and Ajahn Teng one of the workshop, I don't know, somewhere back in 2016 or 17. And when I see what you're talking about is I mean, the idea is very similar to, like I said, when I work on this competitiveness program about building a cluster or ecosystem, how you gonna build an ecosystem around some of the strength that the area has. And I think at that point, I think the concept is interesting. And I think at some point I asked you what are you gonna do after the workshop or things, and you said, oh, you have a node program, right? I remember. And then I said, okay, I'm interested. And then at some point, okay, I joined the node because I want to see what this network wants to do or wants to build. And I think after that, you invited me to one of the boot camp that you organized in Kanchanaburi, I think I remember. And when I went to that boot camp, I see what you actually do with the local community. And I think this is something that I think is very, very, very important. And I think is if what you do is successful, I think it could help Thailand a lot in terms of building this innovative capacity, and I don't know, maybe entrepreneurial capacity also. So that's why I think it's kind of very interesting. And I think, and based on the activity that you do and the things that the network try to build, I think this is something could be very important. That's why I think I want to join, and I want to learn more and maybe develop a node myself for NIDA also. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Pieangpen? Because you joined with Dr. Edward, right? And then you know him for longer than me, for sure.
Yeah, actually, that's the main reason to join. To be able to continually working with Ajahn Ed and you, Ajahn Sakdipon. And another thing is like building entrepreneurship ecosystem in Thailand is not easy. We need to work with like-minded people. We need to expand our network and this type of community. And because this node system, they believe in starting something small. It's like as an Ed says, problem-based network. And we got a chance to outreach to some regional areas outside of Bangkok. We got a chance to learn the real problem in the region, and we can see that some like-minded people are so passionate to help solving problems in the region. So I think to be based in Bangkok and working with high-ranking people, policymakers, and venture capitalists is always good, but we always need to learn more from other people who are trying to solve real problems in Thailand. And in Thailand have so many challenges outside of Bangkok, and if we team up and we work as a network and we work with like-minded people, we are much more happier than answering, delivering KPI to some government program.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Pieangpen. I actually heard the story that a lot of program from US university, whether the MIT or Stanford, bring the MBA student or grad student to come to the emerging market country and try to looking for the problem and try to come up with a good solution, and then they develop some new solution and sell back to us again. So basically, what I try to say is a lot of problem is in our country, but we just try to look at abroad rather than look at ourselves. We have a lot of opportunity, which actually is I want to lead to the discussion about our topic, because some of the audience may think about why is mango tree and the airplane. And basically, both of these objects is not quite related to the entrepreneurship development. But actually, I heard this story 2 years ago from Dr. Edward, and I believe from myself, I think it's a great story, and I want to make sure that it's sent out to the audience. And I would like to Dr. Edward to share us about this story about airplane first and how it connect to the mango trees.
So are you going to share the slides? Okay.
Yes, I'm working now.
Okay, great. So I mean, what Ajahn Guang and Dr. Pieangpen are referring to was we had at the IDE Center we had learned some things from MIT about setting up an ecosystem, an innovation ecosystem, and then we ran a workshop. I think it was, Wong, you said about 2016. That's probably about right. In partnership with MIT, we had some faculty from MIT here, and we used that kind of as a kickoff, and I think that might have been the first time we ever said the idea that we were going to try to then replicate that through nodes. And I think if Ajahn Anukul and Dr. Pieangpen had not come up and said we want to be a node, we probably wouldn't have had to do anything else. We probably wouldn't be working on the network, but you guys came up and said you wanted to be nodes, so then we had to figure out how to do it, and you've been the core ever since of trying to figure out how to build better ecosystems. But one of the things that comes through that in our discussion of ecosystems is, like Pieangpen just said, getting like-minded people together, and it's not easy because everyone is talking about innovation these days. Everyone is talking about entrepreneurship. Everybody knows all the buzzwords. All right, it's all the same words. So it's not always easy to find out who is like-minded, because it seems like everybody's working on this everywhere. So one of the stories that I kind of wanted to tell about this was, if I'm, I want to tell a story about Papua New Guinea. All right, 80 years ago. Okay, 80 years ago in Papua New Guinea. So, Ajahn Thung, go ahead and click the slide. Papua New Guinea in fact, this isn't only Papua New Guinea. There's a whole bunch of islands in the Pacific where this story is true. I think if you click, you're going to get an arrow. I'm not sure. Okay, so along these islands in the Pacific Ocean 80 years ago, if you were living on one of these islands, suddenly a miracle happened. You were just living your regular island life that had been going on like that for hundreds of years, probably. And you lived a fairly relaxed life. You had a grass hut and you had this, that, and the other thing of your basic existence. And then suddenly gifts started falling out of the sky. All right. From someone outside, we know why they're falling out of the sky. There were, it was in the middle of World War II, and all these islands were contested between, the Japanese Army and Navy and the US and Australia and some of the other allied powers. and they were fighting through all these islands. But meanwhile, the locals, the natives of these islands, you know, just saw these miracle big birds flying in the sky and all this incredible stuff falling out of them, with food in it and all kinds of different things. So it was a miracle. Unfortunately, after about 4 or 5 years, those birds stopped flying over, you know, anymore. Those birds didn't come anymore, and things didn't fall out of those birds anymore. And so people on those islands were trying to figure, okay, what should we do? And so they figured they had to do something to try to replicate these big birds they saw. Okay, so go ahead, Ajahn. So they would build airplanes, and this is a true story. I'm kind of turning the story around kind of from the point of view of an islander, but these actually exist. They're called cargo cults, and they would try to build these airplanes. And the idea was, if they built these airplanes, then the other airplanes, I mean, those big birds they saw in the sky would see this and fly down and come back and bring things back with them. Okay. And what I always liked about this story is, in some ways, it was very similar to what I sometimes saw happening, like Pieangpen was talking about, with those KPI-driven programs. You know, they're kind of solution-driven rather than problem-driven. So, you know, in kind of a funny sort of way, that, you know, this isn't that much different than a lot of programs I've seen. The goal is to build something rather than solve a problem. Okay, so and like all good projects, there's always a project photograph at the end. Okay, I think many people who are listening to this call have probably been on projects, and there's always a team photo at the end, whether that's the end of a conference or a hackathon or whatever. There's always a team photo. And so these guys got together, built their airplane, and they had their team photo. But then I started using that as I thought, okay, well, now what happens? I mean, how does somebody in this group begin to say, hey, you know what, this airplane isn't working? You know, how does somebody begin to discuss it? Because these cargo cults still exist today. And obviously, nothing has fallen out of the sky since World War II. So it's been over 80 years, okay? But they still exist today. So you got to wonder, you know, who would be thinking, you know, somebody in this group might be just like any other bad person that we see, might be saying, hey, we need to, maybe this plane thing doesn't work after all. Maybe this doesn't work. And so, you know, that's where I kind of say, you know, we want to try to find people who are willing to try to do things in an innovation-driven entrepreneurship way, which is my next slide, you know, and that really means starting with a problem, starting with people and saying, okay, now what do these people want, or what do we want in a community to improve things? So, you know, that doesn't happen in this kind of a solution. You know, when the solution's to build an airplane, no matter what, you know, we're going to build the best airplane we can build. And what happens a lot of times is this kind of motivation comes from a trip to MIT or a trip to Stanford or a trip to Tokyo Institute of Technology or whatever. They see a very, very fancy laboratory or a very fancy demonstration of something and say, hey, we have to build that at our place, wherever we are from. And so they get a lot of money because they're usually very influential people. And they use that to, you know, build a version of what they saw. Now, the problem with that solution is, number one, it is a version of what they saw. They never dug deeply into the process of developing the thing. They just tried to make a copy of the output. So that's what these guys did. They end up with a plane. You say to yourself, well, who in the group here is going to say, you know what, I don't think this plane is good enough? Well, you know, we could look at the picture. Okay, click here. Ajahn, go ahead and click. You know, there's the the first guy, the middle guy is the leader, right? That's why he's always in the center picture. Every picture, every project always has the center guy. And you say, well, is he gonna say to everyone after all this time, you know what, I might have been wrong. Maybe this plane isn't good. No, of course he's not gonna say that. So then we say, well, who else might say something? Well, the guy next to him? No, I mean, in any social grouping, whether it's islanders here in the middle of the Pacific or somebody from a Ministry of Science somewhere or wherever, you know, the person sitting next to the main person obviously is the right-hand man or woman. So that person's entire existence, their entire career is based on the success of the first person. So they're not going to say anything's wrong with the plane either. You know, this is the greatest plane. What do you mean what's wrong with this plane? It's the best plane we've ever built. Okay, maybe it's not quite as good as MIT's plane, but what do you expect? You know, we're just a developing country, but this is a great plane for us. Okay, well, if anyone at all is going to say anything, maybe this guy way off to the edge, you know, he's in the edge of the picture for a reason. You know, he's not really part of the mainstream. He's not really questioning. And, you know, if he's the kind of guy who might say, you know what, I don't think this plane thing works. And if he says that loudly in front of the whole group, they'll just shout him down. All right. And he'll never be in any more pictures. But maybe what happens instead is he grabs a few people who are off on that fringe as well. And he says, you know, the airplane isn't helping us at all. Let's go and find a different way of solving our problems. And the first thing he needs to ask is, well, wait a minute, what are our problems? What are we trying to solve? And that's the question that's never.
Yeah. So that's the story about the plane. And then how is you know, linked to the mango tree that we always said about the low hanging fruit, and nobody tried to growing the mango trees. What do you think about that?
Are you asking me, or did
maybe we can ask Dr. Pieangpen, because she's the one who built a lot of airplanes in the past.
Really?
Oh, really?
I'm not sure. I just keep asking. I'm not gonna. So we have around 10 minutes, actually 5 minutes to wrap it up. But we want to link to the, you know, what do you think about this story? Maybe Dr. Pieangpen can answer that, and how it linked to the quick win and the low hanging fruit from your perspective to match with our topic.
I would say that it's a very sad story. And we should try not to build another airplane that cannot fly, right? And when, as an Ed talking about people seeing something great at MIT or Stanford and come back to our home and trying to build the same thing, trying to prove that we can create the same result, and spending a lot of money building this type of airplane is kind of true, but it's so sad to see that along the way in my career. So I think what we can do further from now is don't stop questioning, right? Even if in Thai society, you be a very small person and you need to listen to some great idea. You need to follow your boss, like let's build another airplane. But if we stubborn enough and we start questioning, why do we need that airplane? How could it solve a problem in Thailand, and make it like a normal way of working, and don't let anybody kill your creativity and your this kind of argument then. And among our node members, I think it's quite comfortable to start questioning and trying something small, not trying to build a big thing to show off people. So I think there's still a way not to repeat the same the previous mistake.
Start with the Thai
By the
first,
way,
right?
John Thung, I just want to add something to what Dr. Pieangpen is saying. I mean, this isn't a problem just on the Thai side. Actually, I'm annoyed by MIT about this as well. I mean, I went to MIT, so I'm going to speak very directly. I mean, MIT has gotten so much into marketing itself, and so it sells this stuff like it's magic, and it's annoying to me as an alumnus. That they shouldn't be. What they should be saying instead is, oh, you see this fancy room and this fancy display because we attract huge amounts of money from everyone all over the world, so we can build these fancy displays. But let me tell you how hard it was to do the research behind it. We've been working on it 10 years. We had these dead ends and stuff. And that's a story that a place like MIT should be really explaining. But MIT and Stanford and these places have gotten into the overtop marketing as well. And they like to market these Wizard of Oz type things. And anybody who's been in real research or real product development or whatever, including those people at MIT, knows it's not easy. And instead of telling this, and they don't tell a story, okay, they say it's hard, but when you're standing there looking at a gleaming something or other at MIT, a gleaming laboratory, and the tour person saying, oh, it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to see how hard it is because there's just so much money there. So it's kind of I think the MITs of the world also send set wrong expectations, and really could be of better service to everybody if they were at the front end of the process rather than explain to everyone what the back end of the process should be as well, meaning the gleaming output.
Yeah, so I would like to thank you all of you. Actually, we kind of time is up, and then we know that we have a lot of discuss, and I would like to, I believe that this session will tell you about how to grow the mango and why don't we shouldn't stuck into the solution, but keep ask the why question more about that. And first of all, last but not least, I would like to invite, whoever think that you try to develop the people or the community or try to solve the problem across the country, and or even try to create the entrepreneurial communities. I would like you guys to join us. You can contact the IDE network or IDE Center at the University of the Thai Chamber of Commerce, so you can join us. And normally each year we always have the support from NEXPO, from the Ministry of the Higher Education, Science, Research and Innovation. It's a little bit long, but basically it's the Ministry of Science. And currently we already have the 25 node, and next year we're gonna recruit the cohort for batch 3 for the network. And we believe that each node will connect to each other, and we try to create this kind of communities, and we can share the story as well as we can push each other to promote the ecosystem. Anyway, lastly, I would like to thank you all of you, Dr. Anukul, Dr. Pieangpen, and Dr. Edward to join this session, and thank you to participants for this event. Thank you.